What would you do as your town was crumbling around you? Neighbors, friends, family, all dying, but what's the cause? Soon doctors realized what was happening. It was the spread of a very dangerous disease, which they soon called smallpox. As it continued to overtake your community, a solution was created by Edward Jenner. He called it a vaccine. His compelling idea was to inject the live disease into your system in order for your body to develop the ability to fight it. As one can assume, this newfound idea created a lot of controversy around whether this injection should be mandatory or not. This ongoing dispute led to many arguments, and the ideas that were published during this debate are still actively being argued in relation to COVID-19 today.
Smallpox is a dangerous virus that is caused by variola virus. When first infected, the sick will have a high fever and a rash on their face and body. It is spread through the air as someone who is contagious coughs or sneezes, and droplets from their nose or mouth is spread onto another person. Smallpox is believed to have first infected humans around the time of the earliest agricultural settlements, some 12,000 years ago, Greenspan stated. It has been founded on mummies from back in the 12th century BC. Then smallpox emerged 10,000 BC in the northeast African settlements. In the 1600s through 1800s, smallpox spread globally. However, in 1763, after many years without the disease, it was introduced as a weapon to help Geoffrey Amherst, the commander-in-chief of the British, to be used against the Native Americans in the French and Indian War. This commander-in-chief would hand out infected blankets to the Native Americans, and it would infect them with smallpox, killing most.
During the unfortunate events of World War I, there was a vast spread of smallpox throughout the soldiers. This is due to every soldier fighting in the war being in close proximity to each other. Since smallpox is spread through the air, the germs travel quickly, leading to a massive spread. Smallpox continued to spread from the end of the war in 1918 all the way into the 1920s, making this outbreak the most recent epidemic of smallpox.
For treatment, the U.S. government allowed a cure called tecovirimat, which was an antibacterial therapy. When the government moved the testing from rabbits and monkeys to humans, they had to take 60 milligrams of tecovirimat twice a day for 14 days. This treatment helped in some ways, but it was not a cure and there was still no answer. However, once you recover from smallpox, you have immunity. Because of this, the people who recovered from smallpox would then become the doctors and nurses to aid the many who at the moment were still infected. The spread of smallpox was slowed worldwide in 1979 when an English doctor named Edward Jenner created a vaccination. Although the vaccination was created and being distributed, smallpox did not fully decimate until many years later.
The most common form of smallpox killed perhaps 30% of its victims while blinding and disfiguring many others. But the effects were even worse in the Americas, which had no exposure to the virus prior to the arrival of Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors, Greenspan stated. In addition to these effects, many survivors also are left with scars all over their body from the rashes they had received. People did anything they could to protect themselves against the increasing danger of this disease. As the CDC stated, one of the first methods for controlling smallpox was variolation, a process named after the virus that causes smallpox, variola virus. During variolation, people who had never had smallpox were exposed to materials from smallpox sores, pustules, by scratching the material into their arm or inhaling it through their nose. Although this method did not truly help citizens, it was the community's first attempt to remove the virus, and one could see how these communities banded together in order to contain this evil. Ultimately, because this method did not work, people sought reassurance and an actual cure. As people continued to hopelessly long for an antidote, death did not delay. To summarize, the total estimated death count was 300 million people since the 1900s alone.
Although there is no information on what gave Edward Jenner the idea to inject a living virus into a person, his informative cowpox experiment completely changed everything. Greenspan wrote that in 1796, English doctor Edward Jenner performed an experiment that would, in good time, create the virus's downfall. By inserting pus from a milkmaid with cowpox, a disease closely related to smallpox, into the arm of a healthy 8-year-old boy and then allotting him to no effect, Jenner was able to conclude that a person could be protected from smallpox without having to be directly exposed to it. This was the world's first successful vaccine, a term that Jenner coined himself. This influential, effective remedy began the new frontier of medicine worldwide.
As Dr. Edwards said, let the vaccine fluid be taken for the purpose of inoculation from a pustule that is making its progress regularly and which possesses the true vaccine character. Vaccines still operate the same way presently. Basically, the medical personnel inserts a very small portion of the active disease into the body. This way, the body will get used to the virus and be able to fight it off in the case that a person encounters the full contagion. On any day from the 5th to the 8th, or even a day or two late, provided the obsolescence be not then formed around it. By saying this, Dr. Jenner states that the vaccine will not be effective immediately, but will take no more than 5 days. This happens in order to make sure that the body is fully immune to the certain variant.
Knowing all this, Dr. Edward Jenner strongly urged all to acquire the vaccination. First, with the vaccine virus of the most effective kind, and secondly, should it be ineffectual with virus. But if the Constitution shews an insusceptibility of one, it commonly does the other. By saying this, Dr. Edward Jenner is comparing getting the vaccine to being as important as the United States Constitution. This strong declaration led to numerous arguments and debates whether the smallpox vaccine should be mandatory or not. By doctors, government officials, entire communities, and so many more occurred on both sides supporting of and against the mandation of the vaccine. Many boffins created their own research supporting their ideas. The opinions that resulted from these experiments were soon being publicized everywhere. Some urged all to become vaccinated, stating that the more vaccinated people, the greater the chance to end the spread. Dr. Greenhaven stated, as a new study notes, past analyses have estimated that the childhood immunization schedule prevents 42,000 deaths and 20 million cases of disease, and that's only for kids born in a single year. Many major influential corporations agreed with this and began spreading the information. Among these groups were the Chicago Department of Health, the Department of Public Safety, and the CDC. Not only did they advertise the vaccine, but they suggested milkmen, deliverymen, and mail carriers did not come in contact with those who they are delivering to. They also suggested a quarantine period. On the other hand, some believed that the vaccine would not help and was very dangerous and ineffective. Many believed vaccines would lead to things like cancer and learning defects.
This controversial ongoing debate seemed to be everlasting and ultimately came to no conclusion. As doctors argued about their research, tension heightened and no one was willing to listen to the other side's opinion. Different countries and states had different ideas on the vaccine. This meant that certain countries mandated the vaccine while others didn't. Whether it was because of the vaccine or because of the social immunity, smallpox eventually disappeared. In correlation to present day, the mandation of vaccines is still an immensely debated topic. This debate is most prominent when one considers the present epidemic of COVID-19. As a whole, we address the vaccines to have both positive and negative disadvantages and advantages. As the coronavirus's new variants take over, the debate for whether vaccines should be fully mandated or not is at an all-time high. Many colleges, events, and vaccination mandates a mask in order to ensure that there is no spread. However, some states addressed the vaccinations could have unknown long-term effects, so they did not make it mandatory. There is no complete verdict on the debate on whether vaccinations should be mandatory for everyone to receive. Whether any disease becomes a threat, the government must make a decision on this topic. However, in some areas, the vaccination for smallpox was put into law that everyone must receive one. The people were not persuaded but rather required. In some eyes, it was either a good or bad thing. In this situation, diplomacy was not used because instead of trying to convince the people they should be vaccinated, the government resorted to making it law. Right away, when the vaccination was created, it was distributed out worldwide. Just like in today's world, even though COVID-19 vaccinations is not mandatory, it restricts people from doing many things outside of their homes.
Smallpox, the dangerous virus that ultimately led to the creation of the first vaccine, had an immense influence in relation to every virus and vaccine that came after it. With this great influence came great debate. The debate of whether or not the smallpox vaccine, along with every other vaccine, should have been or should be mandated. Although the world and the United States have not decided on a full conclusion for this argument, the debate of whether or not the smallpox vaccine should have been mandated forever altered the public's view on how to face a virus.